Hi everyone, my name is Mickey Barbley and I'm the instructor for your online public speaking course this semester. I really wish that we could meet at least once in person. I always like getting to know you. I like the interaction in classes. I like the fact that we get to ask questions and have a back and forth, but this is an online class, so we don't get to do that this semester, so we'll make the most of it. I wanted to post a couple of videos online. This one is just sort of some basic thoughts about public speaking. I will post one later this week about the differences between an informative speech and a persuasive speech. But this is just sort of speech 101, I guess you could say. Why do you take public speaking? Well, I had a student argue with me about that once. She said she was going to be a physical therapist and she did not need to know how to speak to the public. Well, ironically, I had just completed 8 weeks of physical therapy for a hamstring injury, and I said, if I'd been going to you for physical therapy and you were doing things that were sometimes downright painful and never saying a word to me, that would be very uncomfortable. So whether you like it or not, you're going to have to speak to people at some point in your career. Companies want people who are well-spoken and who feel comfortable speaking. If they send you away for training, they want you to be able to come back and tell what you learned. Maybe you have to give weekly or even daily reports of how your department is doing. Communication is critical in public life, in private life, relationships, clear communication, in political life. So many problems are caused by unclear communication, so you want to be clear. Now, differences in speeches, and what I'm doing now is more of a lecture, so it's very informal. A speech is actually fairly formal. And by that, I don't mean it's still good to have it as a conversation, but you still need to have a clear introduction, middle, and end. For example, if I were starting a speech to you, I would say, my name is Mickey Barbley. I've been doing corporate training for about 20 years. I taught public speaking at Walter State for the last 6 years, and this is my second online course at Tusculum. Now, what did I just do? I established my credibility. Why am I a credible source for the information I'm giving you in this speech? I just gave you that. Now, maybe if you do your introductory speech on playing the guitar, I've played the guitar for 12 years. Maybe it's a topic that you really feel passionate about and you've done a lot of research. I've researched this. I've read every book that I could find. I spend a lot of time online finding out about this topic. Whatever it is, why should we listen to you as an expert on this particular topic? Some people say that with speeches, you tell them what you're going to tell them, the introduction, you tell them, the body, and then you tell them what you told them, which is a conclusion. So your speech should have, it's like a composition. You have a clear beginning, middle, and end. Now, anxiety. Everyone wants to know about speaker anxiety. What do you do about it? Well, number one, don't try to eliminate it. Try to manage it. Try to minimize it. Don't try to eliminate it. I have speaker anxiety almost every time I speak in front of a group. Why? Well, I think part of it is because I care. I never know what people are going to come back at me. I never know what people are going to ask. I'm always looking. Eye contact is important because I'm always checking the audience to see if there's someone that I'm losing, someone that they're not paying attention. So I try to say something maybe that will get their attention. But you minimize your anxiety. Public speaking is the number one or two fear of most Americans. Why is that? Well, I think we don't like to be judged. We don't like people looking at us and thinking, well, do they really know what they're talking about? Hopefully, if you rehearse your speech and you've really taken time to put it together carefully, people will pay attention. People will enjoy your speech. I cannot stress strongly enough how important it is to practice your speech. Now, again, this is a lecture. This is fairly informal. But if you've got a 3 to 4 minute speech or 4 to 5 minute speech, you really need to practice. Now, when I say practice, I do not mean write the entire speech out word for word. I cannot stress strongly enough how important outlining is. I know people hate to outline, but it's really such a useful tool for speeches. You can outline your speech, and then you can say, This is way too much information to cover in 4 minutes. Or, I really need to add another section here to make sure that this is sufficiently covered. Have a speaking outline. Have an idea of what you want to cover and go to that. Now, why? Why do I suggest you don't write your speech out word for word? Because nothing is more boring than having someone who is looking down, reading word for word what their speech is all about. You will lose people immediately. Plus, it starts to sound very mechanical and very boring. People can give really effective written speeches, but they have teleprompters and they practice them a lot. It's a real skill and it takes a lot of work. For the kind of speeches you're doing, if you can just get that speaking outline put together so that you know what your main points are and you can go from point to point to point, that will serve you much better than trying to read the speech out. And for goodness sake, don't try to memorize it. Why? Because you start rehearsing or reciting your speech and then all of a sudden something happens and you don't have any idea what you're supposed to say next. And it's almost impossible to go through, replay, and pick up your speech again. So if you just have a good idea of what you want to cover, I think you'll be a lot happier than trying to write every word out time to time. Now, timing. Timing is critical. There's something about being in front of a camera or a group that your internal clock just goes haywire. True stories. I have had students who looked at me when they finished their speech and said, "Oh my gosh, was that long enough?" And I say, "It was supposed to be 4 minutes and you went 16. Yes, it was long enough." I've had people say, "Oh my gosh, was that too long?" That was 30 seconds. No, it was not too long. There is just something that you just lose your sense of timing. So again, if you rehearse your speech, you get a feel for how long it is. Maybe there are areas where you need to add more. When you speak in front of a group, try to speak slowly so that they can understand you. If you know that you're going to get nervous and speak quickly, then you realize that you probably need to add a little more information to your speech. But again, that's another thing I stress. Speak clearly, speak loudly, speak slowly. Now, you don't want to be too slow. You do want it to sound like a conversation, but you don't want to get so nervous that they can't understand what you're saying. If there are two things that I look most for when I'm grading your speeches, one would be the timing. I don't expect you to hit 4 minutes right on the dot. But again, if you go 16 or if you go 30 seconds, I will grade you down for that. The other thing is, during your informative and your persuasive speeches, you need at some point to state a fact, a statistic, a definition, a quotation, whatever. You need to do that at least once. It can't just be your thoughts on a particular topic. And you have to cite the source. If you tell me 75% of Americans believe something, and you don't tell me where you got that source or where you got that information, I grade you down for that. And try to work your sources into the body of the speech instead of saying, 75% of Americans think that chocolate is wonderful. I got that from www.chocolate.com. Say, according to www.chocolate.com, 75% of Americans think chocolate is wonderful. So work it into your speech. Don't try to make the speech flow. Again, it's like a composition. So try to make one thing flow from another. Don't chop it up. Now the last thing, you can't just stop talking. That's not a conclusion to a speech. When you finish a speech, you need to wrap it up somehow. You can tell a story. You can review what you just told them. You can tell an interesting fact or make a really important statement. But whatever it is, you need to do something to wrap up the speech. You can't just say, "That's all I got." I've had people do that, by the way. That is not stopping a speech. That is not a conclusion. That's just you quit talking. It's not the same thing. Okay, well, this probably have gone on long enough with sort of the basics of Speech 101, but I've enjoyed getting to know you all through the speeches that I've seen so far, and I really look forward to listening to your to your informative and persuasive speeches, because that's how I really get to know what's important to you. Thanks very much. I look forward to your speeches, and please contact me and let me know if you have any questions or you need help on anything.